Merry-Carole Powers is a top-tier marketing strategist and creative storyteller architect. She is a former creative director and DEI director at Deloitte. She is the founder of Unicorn Creative, and her newest book is The Great Human Rebrand: How to Step Out of the Labels That Divide Us and Into the Humanity That Unites Us. Welcome to the show, MC.
Thank you so much. I'm so psyched to be here.
Yeah, excited for our conversation. Tell us a little about your personal life, more about your work, and why you put pen to paper and wrote the new book.
Well, I'll start with why I put pen to paper and wrote the new book because it kind of covers all of it. I like to refer to myself as a reformed label maker. And by that, what I am doing is referring to a fairly long and successful career that I had in global branding and advertising, where I lived in the creative departments, which sits at the epicenter of that giant billion-dollar industry. And as a copywriter, as a creative director, what we would do is like use labels to wield all sorts of influence. We would take the most basic products, cornflakes, tennis shoes, hamburgers, you name it, and we could turn them into like cultural icons. And we would do this through the label. We would grab this label, we'd make it all shiny and cool looking, we'd give it a great story, we'd have it stand for this great experience that spoke to people. And then once people were like, oh, yeah, I want to be like that, I want to look like that, I want to hang with those people, whatever that was, we would sort of use that to influence whatever action we were being paid to have someone take. It could be making a purchase, it could be attending an event, it could just be clicking a link and watching a video. Whatever it was, we found this to be highly successful. It's used by the entire industry. It's not used nefariously completely. We do so much good. We help labels that do good in the world. We help labels of nonprofits, but it is still the same system of really taking people and herding them into this group and then sort of influencing this group to act in particular ways. So it was through this kind of an elite experience, kind of a unique experience. And through it, I really learned how powerful labels can be. And I learned something else as well, which is advertising is far from the only people that are, wielding labels. One fellow label maker can spot another from a mile away. So I looked around and was like, wow, our world loves labels. Like we really use them. Institutions everywhere are using them. Religious organizations, use them to decide how we should pray. Political organizations use them to decide how we should vote. Hollywood and entertainment industries will use them to tell us what we should wear and how much we should weigh. And even educational institutions will use them to dictate the manner in which we should be educated, the amount of education we should deem for success, all of those things. And again, it's not always nefarious in its intent, but it is always at the heart creating this lifestyle that someone wants to be a part of and using that category to influence the decisions that they make. So that was a big realization for me. And when I saw how it really is sort of manipulating us out of our individuality, sort of took a step back and thought, okay, I know how to build a label, which means I know how to deconstruct a label, which means I can help people decide whether they want to be a part of that label or not. And if you do, groovy. And if you don't, cool. Like you now have a little more perspective to step out of it and think more individually. So a little bit of a long-winded way to tell you that that's kind of where the book stemmed from and what the hope of the book is.
Well, that certainly resonates with me. That's been my experience. I shared that I despise labels as we're getting ready for our call today, and I've always hated name tags. Um, is that just it's obviously human psychology that we don't want to be left out and left alone to die or be eaten by wolves. So I want to be around other people. I want to fit in. I want to blend in. I want to feel like I'm part of something.
Yep. And I think like as long as that's a conscious decision, right? It's when labels are weaponizing that need to belong
Right.
that they can become a little bit dangerous. Like, a family can threaten you with disowning you. That comes to life through a religious institution in excommunication. That comes to life in a social group with not getting the call to the party. Like the whole idea is to make your choice autonomously, right? And what labels do is they teach us to think like groups. And when we step out of them, we have more power to think as individuals. And then we really get to choose who we belong with. Like we really get to find our tribe that way.
Do most people want that? Or do most people just want the comfort of, I just want to be a part of this deal. I don't want to have the fear of being kicked out of the party or not getting invited to the party. So I'm just going to go along. Is it 50-50? Is that knowable?
Yeah, I can't say for sure what people want. When I look at the world, I do think there's a lot of fear and there is a safety in numbers. And again, we should have numbers. We were born to have people around us. We want our tribe. It's just that we want to be able to choose that.
Hmm.
We're born into one. That's great. As we grow, we develop individually within that tribe, and that creates, the little tribes around that. So, do we want people around us to feel safe? Heck yeah, that's human nature. Do we want to be able to choose that? Ultimately, yes. Are we maybe afraid? We live in a world of backlash right now, where everything is like throwing up a storm of upset, regardless of the decision.
I've
So I can
noticed
understand the need. Yeah, hard to miss.
1,000%. I think it makes all the sense in the world that why human behavior is what it is. Uh, but I'm with you. I'm 100% with you that it's way better to be able to take a step back, away, open the aperture and say, okay, that's great. Coke or Pepsi, Ford or Chevy, right or left, all great. I understand. I want to, as an individual human being whose preferences change from hour to hour sometimes, but certainly decade to decade and everything else,
Yeah.
to say yes to this or no to this. And then it's okay for me to change my mind, by the way.
For sure. Well, that to me is one of the coolest things about identity, which is what our labels come together to form what we in our culture call our identity. Our gender, our nationality, our age, our race, our ethnicity, our ability level, all of these things, create labels and they come together and they form identities and people often rightly so are really attached to those identities. They mean a lot to them. They didn't always come by them easily, right? So it's like having respect for all of that, but then also understanding that there's more to any of us than that identity. Like you would have to shrink yourself pretty small to fit into any one set of labels. And to your point, you can change your mind, right? You could explore your sexuality, in which case you would no longer identify as either straight or, not straight or in the middle, right? You could want to explore the fluidity of your gender, and that's going to change your label. But that is not going to innately change who you are as a human being. You still are going to have your passions. You still are going to have your gifts. You still are going to have your experiences, your perspectives, and all of those things. Those don't change because of the labels we wear. So that's sort of like we've got identity, and then underneath that, we've got individuality. And individuality is much more enduring, and the book really takes you into that. And it's from that place. Like, I think that's kind of what you were getting at when you were saying, I want to choose and I want to change my mind. It's not about giving up, the identity that means something to you. It's about knowing there's more to that, taking a couple clicks in and getting to know yourself better. And we don't live in a world that encourages us to get to know ourselves very well. We live in a world that encourages us to conform because that's easier.
Got to double click on ourselves a little bit more. Got to zoom in
Yeah, it's a
on.
weird thing to tell someone you don't know yourself as well as you think you do. But I find myself doing that fairly often. Sometimes it's not received super well until you kind of unpack it, but
I think that that's a wonderful thing to challenge somebody with. Not that that's what you're doing or that's what you do, but I'll certainly do that. I challenge people all the time to think about what it is that you really want. And,
right.
I got one crack at this deal, with this deal being life, and why not try and do it as much on your terms as you possibly can, as much of your as the individual that you actually are. But the only way to do that is to understand that stuff and to be thinking about those things and asking yourself those kinds of questions.
Totally. And it's like you can be live life on your terms without being confrontational when you're coming from like this place of autonomy and authenticity. Because a lot of times it's like it's on my terms, and there's a little bit of chutzpah to that, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that. It just has to be, no, I actually figured something out about myself. This is what works. These are the people I understand that understand me. This is like a path I want to pursue. And what's interesting is a lot of times I'll find out like you don't have to start a whole new path. I'm seeing with people. When you learn more about yourself, sometimes it's a tweak. Sometimes it's like, you know what, actually, I want to stay in this industry. I want to stay in this kind of role, but I want to do it for this kind of company. And there's where you're bringing more of your passions to the surface, right? Or, and you know what, I don't want to stay in this role, but I do want to stay in this industry because this role, I'm only allowed to bring like 50% of my strengths. So then you're bringing more of your, innate ability. Either way, you're bringing more of your individuality in. And sometimes, yeah, people blow it up and start from scratch, and that's cool too. But it doesn't have to mean that. We live in this black and white world where you're with me or you're against me. And I think there are a million shades of gray and rainbow in between. And you get to explore that hopefully without being confrontational. And the better you know yourself, the less you feel like you have to fight for yourself. So hopefully on your terms can mean something empowering and not something, confronting.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking about that, there's like probably a million different continuums of, a kid turns into a petulant teenager who wants to rage against the machine or be counterculture and tell their parents that they're stupid and everything else. But eventually they'll find their way back to a more reasoned, comfortable person who's happy inside their own skin, not just, you know, giving the middle finger to the system.
Right, right. I have a brother who actually, so we're still waiting for him to grow out of that. I'm kidding. But often when he talks about what he doesn't like or when he rages about it, right? And he's so intelligent and he's so well read and he really comes at it from a smart, intelligent place. It's like, okay, that doesn't work for you, but what does? And then there's a couple crickets, couple crickets. It's like, so as soon as you stop raging against what you don't want, and start thinking about what you do want. That's when the pendulum starts to swing back because you can find a place to be in the world. You can find something that makes sense about the world. And that's when, petulance can turn into peace.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A really interesting thing because we certainly all fall prey to that of getting really mad about things that we don't like. Um, hmm, I guess anger and surprise is a more powerful emotion than just being happy and content.
Well, anger catalyzes the need to change something for sure. But to truly change it, you then have to step out of the anger and
Hmm.
step into something a little more protective, productive. So it's, everything has its purpose. It's anything out of balance that starts to kind of take your feet out from under you.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying about our careers, our professional lives, that we could be within a great organization, just doing something that's, not necessarily bringing out or allowing us to show up the way that we want or do the kind of work that we want. Doesn't mean it's the wrong company. It just means that maybe we're in the wrong role.
Totally. In a way, a job description is a label,
For sure.
right? Now, we made a gentleman's agreement, so to speak, to step into that job description and do that job. So, we are honor bound to do our best, but I don't think it should confine us. I think there's, that I love that phrase entrepreneurship, like making change on the inside and seeing opportunity on the inside. And I think, a lot of companies have woken up a little bit to realize that it can't just be a rigid box. And so I think there are, if you got a leader and not a manager, I think you can go and say, I have more to give. How can we do this? Sometimes, you do it through coaching other people. Sometimes you do it through creating a new role. Sometimes you just get a new project and kill it. And it's like it shows what can be done. So there's lots of ways to do it. And sometimes people say, no, we don't want more to you. And then that like giant blazing red flag,
Yeah, for
time to
sure.
get,
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that for sure. My wife works in human resources, so there's lots of HR jokes, the party police.
yeah.
But then you have obviously CEO. I'm a hard driving CEO, or I'm Richard, whatever. We all can point to people that are a little bit different than your button down CEO type or a CFO or whatever it might be. So there's behaviors that go along with even job titles and the job descriptions. To your point, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I will say, like, again, like, no matter what the level, take it to the executive level, take it to the one step up, the worker bee level. If you can, like, be a leader and not a manager, then you are going to be a little bit outside the realm of quote unquote normal, which is great because you're going to be able to inspire through your unique things. If you bring in your stuff, you're not going to be like everyone else,
Yeah.
and that should be a good thing.
I think that that certainly is a good thing. So every, and to your point again, every aspect arena of life we have put labels on. And
Yes.
some things we carry with us. I'm thinking about veterans, and that's a label that I would be proud to have for the rest of my life, certainly. But Republican or Democrat, I don't think is as attractive, and certainly less so by the minute, it seems. But it's vegetarian, it's CrossFit guy, it's Christian, it's gamer, it's everything. Everything. I can make a label for myself versus my identity. So how do I start to engage in this kind of work, in figuring out my identity and my individualism
Yep.
without just getting lost?
That's okay. It's like you sort of dissect it, right? Okay, so like you said, you can have a label. It can be any label. The book uses the label of gender because I feel like that's one that I've lived. So I have the right to talk about that, right? And
Sure.
so you see what's under that label. So we'll take an example, like women. Okay, let's start with girls. A little girl who loves baseball is a tomboy,
Mm.
but a little boy who loves baseball is an athlete. One of those is a career path, and one of those is something you are meant to grow out of. So there is a set of expectations under there, but the truth is what's under there is a passion and an ability. And so how do you nurture that passion and that ability and take away that label? So you see, you started with the label of identity, be that, tomboy, and then you click into the individuality. It will generally fall into what I call the four elements of individuality: innate talents, earned skills, unique personality traits, and driving passions. So an innate talent would be, there's coordination there. There's athletic ability there. A driving passion would be maybe it's being part of a team. Maybe it is the sport itself. Oddball quirk. Maybe she sticks her tongue out every time she puts her like arms up to go to bat, right? Those are the things that make the human being an individual. So to answer your question, you click in. You click in on what's under that label. I'm a gardener. Right? Okay. That if you're a successful gardener, if you're truly a gardener, that means you are, you got that green thumb. You have an ability to grow things. Can you see how that would transfer to a skill in the business world? You can cultivate teams. You can innovate products. You can grow markets. Like you take that skill, that ability, and you repurpose it, which really is what the book does. It takes the ability to build a brand and repurposes it first from products to people, and then shows people how to live beneath that and really build something that matters. Because the word brand and the idea of personal branding has become so bastardized in the world. It means nothing when it really is an amazing tool if you can wield it with some sort of authenticity and meaning.
It's a exceptional point because that term has been beaten the to a pulp, but
Yep.
it could it could make all the difference, and it could really help you to get closer to what it is that you actually want, and that's what we actually want.
Look at how that system, how that toolbox has created success in the world. What could be more ordinary than a cornflake? Nothing. What could be more original than a human being? Nothing. And yet, because we're applying all of these skills to a cornflake, it's the billionaire. Whereas the person is, struggling for the most part in our country to just make ends meet. That's an insanely upside down world, in my opinion. So the skills work. Like, and that's one of the things I think is really important. I didn't make this stuff up. It is proven in the world, but I did through creative thinking and strategic thinking repurpose it. So these things work. All you have to do is turn on the TV and see how much somebody's willing to pay for a Super Bowl ad to know that there's some reason that's a worthy investment.
And with that, MC, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you? Where can they get their copy of The Great Human Rebrand?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So the book is available on Amazon, and all you got to do is type in the Great Human Rebrand in the search code, and it'll come up. And I also have a site which gives a little more information about me. Again, thegreathumanrebrand.com. If people are interested in applying the theory of originality to a startup, I also have a business called Unicorn Creative, and that's creative with a K, unicorncreative.com. And there's a lot in the book to help individuals get started. And then the other thing is if companies are interested in helping their people, if your wife, for an example, is wanting to bring in a development program, I do a couple of those more on a personal professional development level within a company. One of those is called Diversity Deep Dive, which takes everything we've been talking about and really workshops people through it because there's more to our diversity than what meets the eye, which is where it lives right now. And the other one, I've created a really specific program, which I have a ton of heart for, which is called Womentorship, which helps women in business. Branding and advertising is a highly male-dominated business. And there were times it was difficult to get the mentoring. There were times it was difficult to overcome the stereotypes. So this program takes traditional stereotyped weaknesses of women in the workplace when people, for example, nurturing. People thought that was a weakness that belonged in the home. Guess what? Nurturing is another word for mentoring, and it's a highly sought after skill. So it helps women embrace their individuality in a more professional way after we've been beat into our heads to have it break down. So anyway, more of that on the page. I know you were just kind of asking for some information, but there's the book, there's the programs, and there's the company, and they're all out there in the ways that I the links that I gave you.
Well, there's so much value in all of that, and certainly it's always a dangerous thing to say there's never been a more important time, but there's probably never been a more important time to the more we understand ourselves, then we can probably go through the exercise. Since we've gone through the exercise of better understanding ourselves, it will probably help us to be more empathetic to other people. I have to imagine as we explore in ourselves, it's going to help us to explore a little bit deeper than just white straight guy George. Oh, look at George. He does other things as well. So I think that there's so much value to this. So if you enjoyed this as much as I did, show MC your appreciation. Share today's episode with somebody else who appreciates good ideas. Pick up your copy of The Great Human Rebrand on Amazon. You can also go to thegreathumanrebrand.com or human rebrand thegreathumanrebrand.com. Check out Unicorn Creative. It's Unicorn Creative and creative with a K. And check out all the different offerings if you are working within an organization and what MC has been talking about resonates. Check out some of those offerings. If you are a woman in the business world, check out that offering as well and get engaged and get to know oneself a little bit better. Thanks again, MC.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved this conversation. Thank you.
Me too. Until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.